I never thought I'd be the type of person to end up sleeping in a tent in my own backyard. But here I am, trying to figure out how everything went so wrong so fast. Maybe I should start from the beginning, when things were actually good between Alexander and me. When we first got married, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Alexander was this successful tech manager with his own YouTube channel that was actually starting to make real money. He'd come home from his corporate job and spend an hour streaming to his audience, talking about productivity tips and tech reviews. I loved watching him work. He was so focused and driven. The best part was how well he provided for us. Within our first year of marriage, he bought me this gorgeous BMW, and I had a closet full of designer handbags and jewelry. The Cartier bracelet he got me for our second anniversary still makes me smile when I think about it. Our house was beautiful too, nothing huge or flashy, but everything was high quality and comfortable. I'd spend my days organizing our space, making dinner, and just enjoying the security of it all. When Alexander would finish his stream each night, we'd eat together and talk about our days. I felt so lucky to have found someone who could take care of me like that. My friends were all struggling with boyfriends who couldn't even pay their own rent. And here I was with a husband who made sure I never had to worry about anything. But somewhere around year 3 or 4, things started feeling different. Alexander's routine became so predictable I could set a clock by it. Work for 8 hours, come home, stream for an hour, answer emails, eat dinner, watch TV, bed, repeat. The conversations during dinner got shorter and more focused on practical things. Bills, household stuff, his work projects. I started feeling like I was fading into the wallpaper of our perfectly organized life. I'd sit on the couch while he streamed, watching him laugh and joke with people in his chat, being charming and funny for his audience. These strangers got to see this engaging, entertaining version of my husband while I got the tired, routine version who barely looked up from his phone during dinner. It started eating at me. Why did he have energy to be interesting for random people on the internet, but couldn't be bothered to plan a date night or surprise me with flowers anymore? One evening after he'd finished a particularly lively stream, where he'd been cracking jokes for an hour straight, I decided to bring it up. He was in the kitchen grabbing a snack, and I followed him in there. "I feel like you don't date me anymore," I said, trying to keep my voice light and not accusatory. He turned around with this confused look on his face. "What do you mean? We're married? You got everything you wanted." That response hit me like a slap. Everything I wanted. What about feeling desired? What about romance? What about feeling like he actually chose to be with me every day instead of just going through the motions because we'd signed some papers? But we never do anything spontaneous anymore. I tried to explain, "You used to surprise me with little trips or bring me flowers just because. Now everything is so routine." Alexander just shrugged. "I work hard to give us a good life. I thought you appreciated that." I did appreciate it, but apparently that wasn't enough for me to say. Instead, I felt this frustration building up inside me. He was treating our conversation like I was being unreasonable. Like wanting to feel special in my own marriage was asking too much. After that conversation, I started noticing how other couples interacted when we were out. I'd see husbands who still held their wives' hands, who planned surprise date nights, who looked at their partners like they were genuinely excited to be with them. Meanwhile, Alexander would sit across from me at restaurants, scrolling through his phone, planning his next video or responding to comments. I found myself spending more time on Facebook, particularly in these relationship groups where women would share their experiences. Reading their stories made me realize I wasn't crazy for wanting more emotional connection. There were so many posts from wives who felt invisible in their marriages, who missed feeling pursued and desired. The responses were always so supportive. Other women telling them they deserved better, that marriage shouldn't mean the end of romance. That's actually how I met Troy. He'd commented on one of my posts in a relationship advice group, something I'd written about feeling taken for granted. His response was so thoughtful and understanding. He said something like, "Your feelings are completely valid. Marriage should make you feel more special, not less." We started chatting privately, just about relationships and life in general. Troy was everything Alexander wasn't when it came to communication. He'd ask about my day and actually want details. He'd remember little things I'd mentioned in previous conversations. When I told him about the "you got everything you wanted" comment, he was genuinely angry on my behalf. If I had a woman like you, I'd never leave her bored. He told me during one of our longer Facebook conversations, "You deserve someone who makes you feel like you're still worth pursuing." Those words hit something deep inside me that had been starving for months. When was the last time Alexander had made me feel like I was worth pursuing? When was the last time he'd gone out of his way to make me smile or surprise me with something thoughtful? Our conversations started getting more personal, more flirtatious. Troy would compliment me in ways that Alexander hadn't in years. He'd tell me I was beautiful, that I seemed like an amazing person. that any man would be lucky to have my attention. It felt like I was coming alive again after being in hibernation. I knew it was probably crossing some kind of line, but it felt so harmless. We were just talking. I wasn't doing anything physical, just enjoying conversations with someone who actually seemed to value my thoughts and feelings. Marriage doesn't cancel out my need to feel appreciated as a person. Right. When Troy suggested we meet for coffee, I almost said no. But then I thought about Alexander, probably at home planning his next video or responding to work emails, completely unaware that his wife was feeling completely invisible in their marriage. Would he even notice if I was gone for a few hours? Meeting Troy in person was electric in a way I'd forgotten was possible. He looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. We talked for 3 hours, and it felt like 30 minutes. He was funny and charming and so present in our conversation. No phone, no distractions, just genuine interest in getting to know me better. Your husband is an idiot if he doesn't see what he has, Troy said as we were leaving. You're incredible. Tamara. Driving home in my BMW, I felt this weird combination of guilt and excitement. I knew I was playing with fire, but I also felt more alive than I had in months. Was it really so wrong to enjoy feeling desired again? The physical part didn't happen right away. We met for coffee a few more times, and our Facebook messages got more intense. Troy would tell me about his day, ask about mine, and always make me feel like the most important part of his world. The contrast with Alexander's distracted half-attention at home became more and more stark. Alexander never asked where I'd been during my coffee dates. He never seemed to notice when I was texting more than usual or when I'd spend extra time getting ready to go run errands. His routine was so set in stone that I could have probably disappeared for a full day and he might not have realized until dinner time. When Troy and I finally crossed that physical line, it felt inevitable. We were at his apartment, and he'd made me lunch, actually cooked for me, which was something Alexander hadn't done in years. Troy kept telling me how beautiful I was, how lucky he felt to be with me, how he couldn't believe someone wasn't treating me like a queen every single day. Being with him felt like remembering who I used to be before I became just another part of Alexander's efficient, organized life. Troy made me feel special, desired, worth the effort. For almost 3 years, I managed to balance both relationships. Alexander never suspected anything because he was so wrapped up in his work and his channel. Our routine at home continued exactly the same. He had no idea that I was getting my emotional and physical needs met elsewhere. I told myself it wasn't really hurting anyone. Alexander seemed perfectly content with our arrangement. He had his work, his streaming, his comfortable life. I wasn't taking anything away from him by finding connection with Troy. If anything, I was probably a better wife because I wasn't constantly feeling resentful about being ignored. Troy understood me in ways that Alexander never had. He'd bring me flowers, plan little surprises, tell me constantly how much he appreciated me. With him, I felt like the woman I was supposed to be, valued, pursued, cherished. Alexander had turned me into a piece of furniture in our house, but Troy made me feel human again. I got comfortable in the routine of it all. Alexander never checked my phone, never questioned my schedule, never seemed particularly interested in my day beyond the basic logistics. I was careful. I used Facebook Messenger. I was discreet about when and where I'd meet Troy, and I never let it interfere with Alexander's needs at home. For almost 3 years, it worked perfectly. I had security and stability with Alexander, and passion and emotional connection with Troy. I felt like I'd figured out how to get everything I needed without disrupting the life Alexander and I had built together. Then one evening, I came home from grocery shopping to find Alexander sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. That wasn't unusual. He often worked on his videos or answered emails there, but something about his posture seemed different, more focused, more intense. "Hey," I said, setting the grocery bags on the counter. "How was your day?" He looked up at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "So, how's Andre doing?" My blood turned to ice. Andre. Why was he asking about Andre? Wait, he meant Troy, but he'd said Andre. How did he know about Troy at all? My hands started shaking as I tried to figure out what to say. "I don't know what you mean." I managed to get out, but my voice sounded weird and shaky even to me. Really, Alexander's voice was completely calm, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd been yelling, because according to your Facebook messages, you know exactly how Andre is doing. Or Troy, or whatever his name actually is. The grocery bag slipped out of my hands and hit the floor. I felt like the room was spinning. How did he know about the messages? I'd been so careful. "Alexander, I can explain." "You can explain what?" "Exactly." He turned the laptop around so I could see the screen. It was full of my Facebook messages with Troy, messages going back months, messages that were clearly not just friendly conversation. I dropped to my knees right there in the kitchen. "Please, Let me explain. It's not what it looks like. We were just talking. It was just conversations. Just conversations? Alexander's voice was still eerily calm. Is that what you call, I can't wait to feel your hands on me again? Just conversation. I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. How had he found those messages? I'd never used our shared computer. Only my iPad. And The keystroke tracker on the iPad caught everything. Alexander said, like he was reading my mind. Every message. Every plan. Every time you lied to my face about where you were going. I was still on my knees, trying to find words that would fix this. Alexander, please. I never meant for it to go this far. I was just lonely. I felt invisible. Get up, he said quietly, and get out of my house. What? Alexander? No, we can work through this. It was a mistake. I'll end it right now. I'll never talk to him again. You can go sleep under a bridge for all I care. His voice was still calm, but there was something final in it that made my stomach drop. You made your choice. This is my house too. I was starting to panic now. You can't just kick me out over some messages. Messages. Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tamara, you've been having an affair for almost 3 years. 3 years of lying to my face every single day. 3 years of using my love and my trust like a doormat while you were with him. It wasn't like that. I was crying now. Ugly crying right there on the kitchen floor. I love you. Alexander? I made a mistake. But I love you. No, you don't. He closed the laptop and stood up. Someone who loved me wouldn't have done this. Someone who loved me wouldn't have spent 3 years lying and sneaking around. You love what I provide for you? There's a difference. He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back to me. You can come in to use the bathroom or shower, but only when I'm here to supervise. Other than that, you're not welcome in this house. Alexander? Please. I scrambled to my feet and followed him. You're being crazy. People have conversations. People have connections. You ignored me for years. But he was already walking away, and I heard the front door close behind him. I stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by scattered groceries, trying to process what had just happened. This had to be temporary. He was angry and hurt, but once he calmed down and we could actually talk about it rationally, he'd understand. I'd made a mistake. But people make mistakes in marriages. That's what counseling is for. That's what working through problems is for. I tried calling him, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I tried texting, but the messages showed as delivered but never read. When I tried to go upstairs to our bedroom, I found that he'd already changed the locks on the bedroom door. My clothes and toiletries were packed in boxes in the hallway. That first night, I slept on the living room couch, sure that by morning he'd be ready to talk. But when I woke up, Alexander was already gone for work, and there was a note on the kitchen table. There's a tent in the garage. Use it. A tent? He wanted me to sleep in a tent. I called him at work, but his assistant said he wasn't taking personal calls. I drove to his office, but security wouldn't let me up to his floor. It was like he'd completely cut me off from his life in the span of 12 hours. That's when the reality started hitting me. I tried calling my sister, but when I explained what was happening, she got quiet. Tamara, she said finally, you had an affair for 3 years. It wasn't like that. I tried to explain. It was emotional mostly. And Alexander had been ignoring me. For 3 years, her voice was getting colder. You lied to him for 3 years? You don't understand the situation? I understand enough. And she hung up on me. My own sister hung up on me. I tried calling my friends, thinking maybe I could stay with one of them, while Alexander and I worked things out. But word travels fast. Apparently, the first friend I called said her husband wouldn't be comfortable with me staying there given the circumstances. The second friend was more direct. I'm not getting in the middle of this. Tamara, what you did was really messed up. By the third night, I was actually setting up the tent in the backyard. It felt surreal, like I was camping in my own yard because my husband was throwing a tantrum. The whole thing was so extreme. Yes, I'd made a mistake, but this was cruel and unusual punishment. The tent was miserable. It was October, getting cold at night, and I kept waking up because of every little sound. When it started raining that first week, I thought for sure Alexander would let me back in the house. But when I knocked on the door, soaking wet, he barely opened it. You can come in to shower? He said, not looking at me. 20 minutes. Alexander, this is ridiculous. I'm sleeping in a tent in the rain. You made your choice when you climbed into bed with him. His voice was still that same eerily calm tone. I'm done talking. After 2 weeks of tent life, our neighbors Denise and Larry couldn't stand watching it anymore. Denise came over one evening while I was trying to dry off after another rainstorm. This is heartless, she said, looking toward the house where Alexander was visible through the window, working on his laptop like nothing was happening. I don't care what you did. No one should have to live like this. He won't even talk to me. I told her, grateful that someone finally understood how cruel this whole situation was. I made a mistake. But this is extreme. Larry and I talked about it. Denise said, "You can stay in our guest room until you figure things out. This is just inhumane." I was so grateful I started crying, right there in the backyard. Finally, someone was treating me like a human being instead of a monster. Living with Denise and Larry was better than the tent, but it was also humiliating. I was a grown married woman, sleeping in my neighbor's guest room, because my husband was too stubborn to have an adult conversation about our problems. Every morning, I'd look out their window at our house, where Alexander was continuing his normal routine like I'd never existed. His YouTube channel was actually growing during all this. I'd watch his videos sometimes, and he seemed completely fine, happy, even like ending our 7-year marriage was just a minor inconvenience he'd handled efficiently. Then one morning, Denise brought me an envelope that had been left in their mailbox. It was divorce papers. Divorce papers. He was actually divorcing me instead of trying to work through our problems like adults. I tried calling him one more time. "Alexander, we need to talk about this. You can't just divorce me over a mistake." It wasn't a mistake. "Tamara, it was a choice. You made it consistently for 3 years. But we can get counseling. We can work through this. There's nothing to work through. I'm done." And he hung up. The divorce moved faster than I thought was possible. Alexander had hired this aggressive, stone-faced lawyer who treated me like I was some kind of criminal. My lawyer, a woman I thought would be more sympathetic, kept telling me I should be grateful. Grateful for what? I asked her. That he's not pushing for a more public divorce. That he's not seeking damages for adultery. That he's not trying to get you charged with anything. For having conversations with someone who actually appreciated me. The whole thing was so blown out of proportion. The hearing lasted 15 minutes. 15 minutes to end a 7-year marriage. The judge barely looked at me. Just confirmed that we both understood the terms of the prenup and that I was waiving my right to alimony. I walked away from that courthouse with a check for $9. Do I start? That was it. 7 years of marriage. And I got $9. Twinner, no claim to the house. No claim to Alexander's YouTube income. No ongoing support. The prenup I'd signed back when I was so in love and grateful for his security had basically left me with nothing. A few days later, I found a letter from Alexander in my mail. I thought maybe it was him finally ready to talk. But instead it was like a final lecture. "You are not the woman I married. You betrayed everything I gave you. You used my love like a doormat. I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for, because it cost you everything we built together. Even in divorce, he had to be condescending and act like he was teaching me some kind of lesson." The final insult came when I went to collect my things from the house. Everything was boxed up and waiting on the front porch. Alexander answered the door just long enough to hand me the BMW keys and take back the jewelry he'd given me over the years. "The Louis Vuitton bags too," he said, pointing to the boxes, "and the Cartier bracelet. Those were gifts." I protested. "They were investments in a marriage that you destroyed. I'm taking them back." He'd changed all the locks, installed security cameras, and blocked me on every possible platform. 7 years together, and he'd erased me from his life like I'd never existed. Now I'm living in a shared apartment with 2 strangers, sleeping on a twin bed in a room that's barely bigger than a closet. I work retail, selling clothes to women who probably have the kind of marriage I thought I had. I've lost 15 pounds because I barely have an appetite anymore. Meanwhile, Alexander's YouTube channel has exploded. He's got over 1 million subscribers now, making more money than ever. He travels for speaking engagements. And from what I can see in his videos, he looks happy and successful. I think there might even be a new woman in his life. I've seen glimpses of someone in the background of his vlogs, though he's careful not to show her face. Sometimes I watch his videos and try to figure out where everything went wrong. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was just trying to feel valued and appreciated and desired. Marriage shouldn't mean the end of feeling special, should it? Alexander had gotten so comfortable in our routine that he'd forgotten I was a person with needs and feelings. Not just a piece of furniture in his perfectly organized life. I know people think I'm some kind of monster for what I did, but they don't understand the whole situation. They don't know what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage, to watch your husband be charming and engaging with strangers while barely acknowledging your existence. They don't know what it's like to spend years trying to get someone's attention and being told you got everything you wanted when you asked for basic emotional connection. Troy stopped talking to me after everything came out. Apparently when things got complicated and messy, he decided he didn't want to be part of it anymore. So I lost both relationships and ended up with nothing. I'm not ready to start dating again. I don't even know how I'd explain my situation to someone new. "Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm divorced and living with roommates because I had an affair and my ex-husband turned out to be vindictive and cruel. That's not exactly an attractive dating profile. Some nights, I lie in my tiny room and wonder if I'll ever have what I had with Alexander again. Not the affair part, but the security, the comfortable life, the sense of being taken care of. I wonder if I'll ever find someone who can provide for me the way he did, but who also makes me feel special and valued. I know I made mistakes. I know I handled things badly, but the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Alexander destroyed our entire life together instead of trying to work through our problems like mature adults. He threw away 7 years over something that could have been fixed with counseling and effort. People are being so dramatic about the whole thing, acting like I committed some unforgivable sin instead of recognizing that I was a lonely wife who made some poor choices because her husband had checked out of their marriage emotionally. But apparently Alexander would rather be right than be married. And now we're both paying the price for his stubbornness. I just hope someday I can find someone who understands that I'm a good person who made mistakes. Not the villain everyone seems to think I am.